Now seems like a really good time to try and get a national network together again. We've worked with organisations who are working and bringing together mental health service user groups from across England. We've worked with people in Wales and in Scotland, and the time has never been better to try and get a national network together. I think the people who gathered at the conference really are saying, now is the time to get together, now is the time to work for a national network. I think service user involvement has never been stronger locally, and we can build on that. We can pull stuff together and make it happen at a national level.
Within the Service User Directorate together, we've got a lot of contact with small local service user groups, and because of the contact we had, we knew that people had lots of talents and skills in the community, and they weren't able to share those because there's no network to or a website, there's no medium for them to go get together and share ideas and talents. We decided to just go ahead and organise something as quickly as possible, because there's a sense of urgency of bringing people together to learn from each other, because all the time we're not doing that, you're squandering the resources, and the main resource that the service user movement has got is service users. So the obvious thing was to call a conference.
There was a big gap with service users conferences. I mean, you hear of the professionals have their conferences all over the country in the trust and the social service, but it's very rare that you hear of a national conference, and I was just chuffed.
We had it emailed through to our organisation called NSUN, which is Service Users Network in Swindon, and we're currently holding over 200 service user members, and what we're very interested in, one of the things I feel that service user groups don't do is link together and meet up and share ideas. And when this came through, and we read it, we were really happy that it was about sharing, part of it's about sharing ideas.
I think for me the biggest challenge, and for the service user movement indeed, the biggest challenge is that we use the talent and the skills that are out there. We don't need to create something different, we need to coordinate what already exists. And there's a sense of urgency, because with the deficit that the NHS is facing at the current time, it's very urgent that we ensure that the government doesn't think that mental health budgets are a soft target. We have to ensure that what we've already got as far as service delivery is maintained, improved, and not taken away from us. So it's not an option not to create that leadership and not to link together and not to ensure that we're providing leadership and very, very clear messages.
There's 173 of us here today, and from the return census forms, I can tell you that 50% of the people came here today because they were supported to come here from their service user group. 30% of the people here today came because they're part of receiving services from the voluntary sector, and the adverts that went to the voluntary sector were distributed and people have been supported to come. And the other 20% have come because the local NHS workers or the PCT workers let people know this conference was on and felt it was important that people came. And so we have 173. That was as of Monday. That might be different as of right now. I do. We've got a very great privilege today. We've got Frank Mangay, who's agreed to come and open the conference with poetry. And Frank has been a survivor for many years and been really active, and I think it's important that people like myself and others in the room who've only been around, say, 5-10 years, we learn from people like Frank who've been active for so many years, and it's only because of the work of Frank and others who came before us that we're in the position that we are today. And I'm part of a group called the History of the Service User Survivor Movement, and I've learned so much from the struggles that went on before I was active. Frank was a member of Prompt, which was active in the 70s, and was certainly a leading person in CAPO, which stands for Campaign Against Psychiatric Oppression. And we have to get our message across in various different ways. And some ways will be poetry, some will be art, some will be through campaigning, some will be through tactics and negotiation. And it's a real privilege that we had Frank here to open the conference. I said to Frank that I would introduce him in this way. And that is that the Black Power movement had the Panthers, the women's movement had the suffragettes, and the service user survivor movement has Frank.
This component about communication is called MAD. MAD! Or just trying to express so many things. Flying through the world on a pair of battered wings. We're talking patois, we're trying to understand each other. As drugs cause communication problems, our personalities that matter. So please try to listen. Please try to listen. Please try to listen.
What I would like to see is from top to bottom to work 100% closely together, because I think we're all working on our own.
I think lots of attempts have been made over the years of developing a national voice, but we don't have a voice on the ground. There's service users I know in my area who don't have a voice.
Everybody's got frustrations about the services they use, and I think it's kind of getting to work together to actually improve services.
I think the biggest thing we can get out today is to work together and use our skills and experiences really positively to come together to form a national network.
You know, if we went into Westminster, I think that would be such a breakthrough for us, really good breakthrough. You know, and I'd love our organisation to be part of that.
Mad! Or just trying to express so many things. Our wings may be battered, we keep flying, we won't give in. Many times chattering conflict, sometimes we miss each other, there's usually too many differences. We have pride, so much pride, we will fly, we refuse to be pitied. Oh mercy! Can we ever find a space to listen?
This conference hasn't come out of the ether. It isn't something that Anne and I just decided on an idle afternoon in December, was it? That we had nothing better to do with January, February and March. It really came, it started, for me, it started with Jan Woolcraft's work. One of the things that Jan will talk a little bit about later is learning lessons from what we've done. So this is another part of doing that. This whole exercise is another part of learning lessons from what's happened so far. I know, from my point of view, I wouldn't be standing here talking to you at all if it hadn't been for some of the people in this room. I'm going to indulge myself a little bit because I have some heroes in mental health, and I'm very fortunate that three of them are in the room with me, and I'm going to embarrass them. Frank's looking shifty because he's one of them. He doesn't even know that. I became aware of the power of storytelling through the work of people like Frank and Peter Campbell, and that's been really important to me. Alan Leader is an unsung hero of the Survivor movement, and his direct power action pack has really been an inspiration to me for 3/4 of the stuff that I think is any good that I've done ever since. And I was so pleased to see Alan just there in the lobby yesterday. It was fantastic. Jan Woolcraft, again, and without a fantastic piece of work called On Our Own Terms, none of us would actually be in this room, and I think that's fair to say. So that's just three of my heroes who I'm very fortunate to have in the room today. And that's, that's part of the history. But I'm also looking out into the room and seeing the future, because the future is what we make out of this opportunity that we've got.
There are a lot of skills, talents and experience in service user groups up and down the country. Some groups are small, some are very large, and a network brings all that experience together.
Everybody needs support, and they also need to support others.
If you've got a national network and policies and programs, so people that have got problems in various areas they could benefit from, and the various organisations could be interactive to help people as far as they possibly can. Yeah, it would be a good idea, because some people have got mental and physical health problems. If you've got an impediment like I have, or some form of handicap, that can be a form of stress that can affect your mental health.
Lots of groups across the country, we all talk about often the same issues with sort of perhaps local slants on them, and then about not reinventing the wheel, and I think there is perhaps quite a lot of duplication of work and input and angst over sort of common problems and challenges. So it could perhaps, if it was well organised, be a way of perhaps moving things forward, hopefully quite dramatically.
A lot of the time people set up groups because they are so disillusioned with services, and they set it up with their own personal energy, commitment, motivation. They do it out of their front room, they do it out of scraps of paper trying to put together newsletters. What we need is a structure that will support those groups to grow, so that individuals don't experience burnout, so that more individuals can join, and that gives us a greater voice. And it's very difficult for one person setting up a group to actually know what else is around there. They think that they're the only person being involved in service. I have no idea where to move, and so by learning from other really established groups with connections of 80 people, that person can learn and build up a structure around their own involvement, around their own group, to build on that and strengthen their voice.
So this is what a network is, what it isn't type of presentation to clarify some of the issues that have come up so far, and looking at why a particular way forward would work particularly well for us as service users. There are very few issues that haven't been addressed before, but currently it's hard to make those links. It's hard for somebody in Lancaster to find out if someone in Surrey has been doing a pretty similar piece of work already, and how they came across, how they found their own solutions. It's a bit hit and miss. Like I say, the issues have been addressed, but the solutions aren't always the same. What the network can do is to provide those links in a much more coherent way, so that organisations and projects can learn from and use those solutions that have been found elsewhere as a starting point. For example, organisations have probably been to each one of us and said, can you do me a piece of consultation work? And it has to be a really thorough piece of consultation work, normally by a week last Friday, or if you're lucky, a month's time. A network will provide more infrastructure to do that. So if we already have the information, we don't spend a month trying to make those links already. We've got the links, we just send the information out.
People will start to see the benefits of networking when something that they've been struggling with locally suddenly becomes easier because they're talking to people who have actually managed to crack that problem. The way that we can make this work for people is to let individuals and groups see the benefits of being involved with a wider group. We will make sure that the network is as diverse as possible. I mean, today we have about 100, we've had a bit of an argument, but we think we've got 153 people here. But even this 150 is only a small cross-section of the numbers of people that we will be getting involved over the next weeks, months and years. Everybody here that I've spoken to has said, what's going to happen next? What are we going to do? How are we going to take this forward? How is this going to be not just words but actions and deeds?
Whatever this thing, this entity is, this sort of network, I think people were clear it needs to be user-ran and user-owned. People said, worrying about the host agency, who that is and who they might take over it and blah, blah, blah. I think if it's user-ran and user-owned, and it's whoever helps needs to know that, but also it's important that this network is, democratic and accountable to its network member.
And independent.
And independent. See, right. Exactly. All those things. And that we need a clear sort of mission, obviously, and vision. I talked about management bollocks earlier, but there is a lot of good stuff in management bollocks in terms of having a good mission statement, so that we all know what we're signing up to, and have a good vision. I'm all up for visions.
I think the principles set out by Jan's report, by the HASCAS report, by the work that Emily Brown has done for Together are really important principles that should form the foundations for any future network. They help to make sure that it's sustainable, that it's hasn't just come out of the ether, but it really is based on a lot of work, a lot of research, and the passion and commitment of an awful lot of people.
The importance of Jan Warcraft's work is that it was the initial document that brought together individuals to look at the whole idea of a concept of a network, and because of people's powerful allegiance to their own local groups, it was the one way that we could get all those groups to come together. I think at this point in time, if we tried to get people together under one banner, one headline, one group, we would have failed. The time isn't right for that. And the whole concept of a network which utilises the powerful loyalties that people have to their local groups is a huge step forward, and Jan was the author of that.
Training people in media skills, like the work that David was doing in mental health media. Here we've got people with masses of media talent. You can just tell from talking to people they've got plenty to say. They just need their confidence built up so they can go and say that to their local journalists, to their local media, or to the regional or to the national media, and we can actually get a real voice that even the Sun can't ignore. We need to be in the national newspapers saying what we're about, so that we can. That's going to be the quickest way of eliminating stigma. We can do it in 6 months with some decent media training. I really believe so. We can make sure that any TV programme that wants to represent mental health issues has to go through this network, and get authorisation. Otherwise, they'll get endless sort of streams of complaints from service user groups, which could be kind of orchestrated around the country. They don't go ask Marjorie Wallace to get saying to advise them. They come to our networks. That's the sort of vision I have for it.
We keep asking people the same questions. Why do we do it? We have to have user involvement. How do we do it? We know a lot of that. We need to do it. We know how to do it. We need to do it better.
We also need to connect and strengthen existing networks. Today is about connecting things up a bit better, strengthening and having a national network so that we can support one another.
We need to build capacity amongst service users and survivors, and the key, most important way of doing that is to give people skills, to train them.
We need leadership training, but what we need to come out of that is for individuals to feel confident, to know where to get additional support in how to set up, how to manage a group, how to manage the finances, the really practical things. The life skills and the key skills are really important around confidence building and self-esteem, but we need really practical solutions. We need to know where to go if we can't do something ourselves.
Training needs money to fund it to happen properly, and when we are a trained force of people, we need the resources to pay for the expertise that we bring. We're worth every bit as much as people who are so-called professionals in the field. We have our own expertise.
And it isn't just a case of saying to the NHS, you're 1,000 million overspent. It's really a case of saying, because you are 1,000 million overspent, you need us. How many of us know which services are so awful you could shut them tomorrow and only 3 people would be upset? It's what we replace them with. We have to replace them with the things that we do need. We don't need to cower away and say, well, we'd ask you for money, but we know you haven't got any and you're having trouble. This is the precise time they need us. We are the untapped resource. We need a vision. We need to seriously create a leadership. We need to be spot on today, to be extremely inventive in how we get the resources to keep meeting today, so we can get people who use forensic services to say what would assist them. We can ask the youth, what do you really need to ensure that other people your age aren't going to get into kind of distress, and if they are, they move through that process quickly. We have the solutions. We need to now really be strong, grit our teeth, and actually go for funding and finance, because the NHS is overspent.
The thing that we need most of all is some money to get started. I think people have been meeting to try and get networks going for a long time, and eventually it comes down to money. We need to fully resource not just one meeting, not just one conference, not just a small steering group, but actually get this network up and running.
We need websites, we need people who can write articles, we need people who can deal with the media, we need people who can negotiate at a top level around very finite policy points. We need people who can understand NHS finance, me not being one of them. We need all that talent that exists out there, and we need to hear the everyday examples. We would get lost and we'd never overcome the barriers if we don't mix and match all the talents that are necessary to make a network work. And the job of a few of us will therefore be to get the resources to ensure we do hear the voices of people around their everyday experience.
As you can see, we came up with quite a bit. Top 3 things were Service User Union, independent funding,
and the Service User Union would need a website and teams listening to and acting on real objective service user voice. And lastly, work with the Department of Work and Pensions, Office of Parliament and Housing to reform benefits, making them work for mental health.
The next thing, existing services to be publicised and advertised so that more people are aware about them. You know, we know where to go rather than just being shoved in a dark corner. Service user self-help, like buddying and mentoring, because like I'm sure quite a lot of people might think that this is a good idea. Who wants to sit in an office most of the time speaking to somebody who's never actually really been through the things that you're going through, doesn't know what's going on in your head? Come on, if you can sit down with a group of people and actually speak about the exact same things, know that you're not alone in the world, then that's got to be better than any medication that they can throw at you, right? Yes. And then listening to young people, which you've all done very well at so far.
There's a real desire for people to continue to meet. I think if nothing else happens, then lots of people have made some good connections that they'll be able to build on for themselves. We know that people actually living quite close to each other weren't aware of what neighbouring groups were doing. So there's a chance for just neighbours to talk to each other more effectively. But there are also people who share common interests who are 1,000 miles apart. And I think there are people whose area of expertise is so specialised that without a national network, it's very unlikely that they'll meet people with the same issues and the same priorities.
Well, the best thing about today has basically been met a lot of very interesting people with a lot to say, both the delegates, both the speakers and the delegates, and it's really shown the potential of boosting the whole service and service users, basically through strength and power and depth and diversity.
I didn't know about this gentleman called Tanji Fowler that is actually to do with the criminal justice system. Why not? I've been trying to find out about him since 2002. How come it's today when I get to this conference and I see this gentleman with exactly what I need is here?
To make connections, really. That's the biggest thing of all. Connections and to not feel so alone in what I do or the group that I'm involved with does. And to maybe learn from others and borrow tap into their skills and knowledge, and also share our experiences of what we've done.
I'll remember the conference most of all as a way of bringing people together and creating a whole range of enthusiasms and desires to do more and achieve more. I think it's no longer good enough for us to be limited by other people's expectations. Events like that raise the bar.
In a year's time I want to be part of a network that's bringing about positive change for all sorts of people, for people who probably without the network would feel hopeless. The network will give a lot of people hope. They'll give a lot of people their lives back again. They'll give a lot of people a chance to reacquaint themselves with skills they've got, and it will give a lot of people a bright future.